Joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline is ESPN college football insider, analyst, and expert. He's also a national champion, Trevor Matich. Welcome back to another Matich Monday. It's Rivalry Week, Trevor.
Rivalry Week. This is BYU Super Bowl.
Let's go ahead and just clear this out of the way right now. For those that don't know and have missed several other interviews during Rivalry Weeks, how many times did you lose to your rival at BYU?
Actually, none. We were 8-0 against Utah and Utah State. So if you want to know what it's like to lose to your rival, you'll have to ask somebody else. Sorry about that.
It's pretty incredible.
And you know what? It still matters. All these years later, we like to have fun and talk trash, but it still matters. This is a huge week for BYU. Ironically, far less of a huge week for Utah because they're one win away from winning the Pac-12 and playing in the Rose Bowl. And it might maybe against Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, and that win is not BYU for them. So to Utah, it's a rivalry. It's a big deal. It matters a lot, but they've got concrete goals that are still right out in front of them that go beyond bragging rights. So I think that's one of the places that BYU has got to hope that Utah might be seeing this as a regular game and BYU seeing it as their Super Bowl, because that's one of the things that has to happen for BYU to have a chance.
Trevor, what did you see from BYU on Saturday night against New Mexico State to impact how you feel about the Cougars going into the rivalry game against Utah?
You know, one of the biggest matchups that BYU will need to click in order to have a chance against Utah is quarterback to tight end. And I thought Zach Wilson threw a lot of passes that showed great accuracy, great velocity. I thought he showed great confidence. And he'll need that. But he'll also need to throw to those tight ends because he can get some physical mismatches there. And against New Mexico State, his two tight ends, Holker and Bushman, had more catches than all the other receivers combined. Now, that's not it doesn't necessarily mean that the other receivers were doing something bad. I know BYU jumped out to a lead and started to take the air out of the ball in the second half. At the same time, I like it that Wilson developed that kind of chemistry going into the Utah game because that chemistry will be necessary.
This is going to be certainly a road test for BYU, and Utah would appear to be the better team. But what do you think, if anything, that BYU does better than Utah, Trevor? Besides
this
field
year,
goal
I can't
defense.
Yeah, maybe that's it. That's about the only thing. I mean, even special teams, Utah excels traditionally. This Utah team is really good, and even though Utah lost their quarterback, Tyler Huntley, Jason Shelley has done really well. Zach Moss is out, but they're still the best running team in the Pac-12. And BYU, in having lost Zane Anderson a while ago and then Corbin Kafusi here recently, can't play without their stars and expect to go out there and have anywhere near the same kind of impact. Doesn't mean they can't win. It just means it hurts BYU more than it hurts Utah because Utah is the best combination offensive and defensive line of the Pac-12. And that's saying something when you consider that Stanford and Washington are traditionally outstanding at the line of scrimmage. Well, no, it's Utah. And Utah usually is competing for that title anyway. And so the fact that they've got a young quarterback playing behind an offensive line that's dominating, and they've got a defensive line that's dominating as well, it's hard to point to something that BYU does better than Utah. But you guys made a great point a couple of minutes ago. The best team is not going to win this game. The best team on that day is going to win this game. And BYU can out-execute and out-effort Utah to give them their chance to win.
Trevor Matich of ESPN with us on BYU Sports Nation. We're diving into the game plan of how BYU can actually pull off the upset against the Utes. They're a 13.5-point underdog. I can't help but want Mother Nature to wreak havoc, and there is snow in the schedule. If this game gets muddied and it's ugly, who's to say that BYU can't put a drive together late in a one-score game if it's really affected by snow and all of the mud and come out of there with the win? I don't know. How much do you think that weather could impact what BYU can do against Utah in this game that they're a near two-touchdown underdog?
Well, Utah played a snow game against Colorado last week, and that affected their running game. It affected both teams. And so Utah will come into that game with some recent experience relative to that. But I think that anytime there's bad weather, anytime there's sloppy field conditions, it always plays to the benefit of the lesser talented team. Not that it means that they'll win. What it means is it usually takes the top off of any talent advantage that the other side has. It kind of tends to mash everybody together towards a sloppy middle.